Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes and today I've got a bit of an update on my ST170 Mark 1 Escort project. I've bolted a few more bits onto the car since the last time you saw it and I'm going to go through that a bit later on in the video. First, I'm going to be heading back down to Hpe Motorsport in Kent to pick up mine and my mate Fred's gearboxes that have been rebuilt by him. Fred's coming with me and I assume we're going to be going in his trusty Transit. So as soon as Fred gets here, we're going to hit the road and head down to Hpe Motorsport. Morning, Fred. How's it going, all right? It's very rare that I'm actually up early enough for a McDonald's breakfast. Right, so that's the gearboxes picked up from Hpe Motorsport. Got them in the back of Fred's trusty Transit. As I said before, Jeff and James are proper top blokes. We was having a nice long chat about cars. We're just stopping off at a local Lidl to grab some munch, and then we're going to be heading back to the garage. Once I get there, I'll give you a little recap on what we've actually had done to our gearboxes. Right, so we just stopped off on the way at Nathan's garage to see what he's up to. So here's Nath's Mark 4 Escort RS Turbo. Looking a bit sorry for itself at the moment. Should be back on the road later today. So we're now heading to my garage. Half the day's already gone, to be honest, so I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to make any progress on the Mark 1 today, but I'll at least show you what I've been up to since the last time you saw it. Right, so I'm back round the garage. I've got the Mark 1 out. The weather's looking a bit ropey, but hopefully it won't rain. So I'll just talk you through what's happened with these gearboxes for anyone who hasn't seen the video when I dropped them off. So this IB5 is a genuine racing Puma gearbox that Fred bought new old stock. He's probably only done about 15,000 miles in it since he bought it, and James said that when he had this box apart it all was completely mint inside. James was even able to save the diff bearings, which usually get destroyed on removal. The reason Fred has had it taken apart by Harris is to have his Quaif ATB diff fitted. So yeah, that's been done. It should mean that Fred's Fiesta should have a lot more traction and should be a lot more usable on track. So on to my Type 9. This has had every bearing replaced, as well as obviously the seals and the gaskets, and it also now has a longer first gear. I bought a longer first gear kit from Burton Power, which basically consists of a lay gear cluster and a different ratio first gear. But I decided to have the lay gear bored out so that I could fit the heavier duty bearing. That job was actually outsourced to BGH Gear Tech, who HPE use a lot. And yeah, James has basically put the whole gearbox together. He did find a couple of synchro rings worn, so they've been replaced. And the input shaft was really worn as well, so he's replaced that. And the good thing about that is that I now have the worn out input shaft that I can use as a clutch alignment tool. The tail end of the casing has been vapor blasted, and he's even painted the main iron part of the casing black, and he's replaced all the bolts for new ones. So not only will this gearbox be able to take a lot more abuse due to the larger lay shaft bearing, and it should help the acceleration with a much longer first gear, because the standard first gear on these is really short, but it also looks the part. In fact, I think it looks too good for an old banger rat look drift car. But so yeah, that's the gearboxes. Obviously HPE's reputation speaks for itself, and they're the go-to guys when it comes to having engines rebuilt, especially the old school Ford stuff, but they also take on gearbox rebuilds and diff rebuilds as well. So if you're in the market for any work like that, definitely check out Hpe Motorsport, and I'll leave a link to their website in the description of this video. Fred's doing the off. So since the last time you saw this car, I've bolted on a few more bits. Most notably, the ITBs are now back on the engine, and I've plugged all the wiring loom into the injectors. I've got the coolant hoses on there, and as I think I mentioned before, the bottom radiator hose just needs a 90-degree bit of silicone and a joiner, and then this hose that comes from the heater joins on to this hose here. I haven't bothered fitting the exhaust manifold yet because I've been playing around with the wiring, and also I'm probably going to line this part of the engine bay with some sort of heat shield. I went to fit the alternator belt, and then I remembered that I need a new idler pulley for it because I robbed that to put on the Mark II when I changed over to a retro Ford alternator bracket. Obviously got the radiator in. I still need to get an electric fan actually for the radiator. Again, that was robbed and used on the Mark II. I've also got the carbon front bumpers back on now, which I removed because I put the metal brackets on here, which I used to lift the shell up to get the engine in. So in theory, things should start moving along more quickly for this car. At the moment, I'm working on making sure that all the electrics work, and I was round here yesterday having a play with that. As usual, things ain't going as smoothly as I would have liked, but I'm sure I'll get through it. So when I was round here testing the electrics yesterday, the stalk assembly came apart. This little clip basically pinged off, and then the switch basically separates into two parts. A couple of springs fell out, as well as a little copper contact, which I've now fitted back in, but there is one bit that I couldn't find, and that is a little bit of plastic that goes in there. I think it's triangular in shape, and that is what locks the indicator switch. So at the moment, it's just really floppy. Okay, so I've got the clocks wired up. They're just resting on the steering column at the moment. I've taken the front off because I keep chipping the paint. Now if I turn the ignition on, you can see that the volt gauge is going up. So that's working. Now the temperature gauge, I've got the temperature sender wire earthed to the block, so that should go right up, and that's not working. Now the volt gauge doesn't come off of the regulator on the back, but the temperature gauge does, and the original fuel gauge would as well. This is a mechanical oil pressure gauge, so obviously that doesn't run off the regulator either. Now if you look on the back, this is the regulator here, which I think is at fault. Now if I measure this pin on it, it is getting 12 volts. If I measure this one, which should have 5 volts coming out of it, there is literally nothing. At home yesterday, I tested the gauge using a 9-volt battery, and it moved fine. So that's what leads me to believe that the regulator is at fault. I'm going to fit an aftermarket one from eBay and then see if the gauge works. Now I've unplugged all the backlight bulb holders, which I had upgraded to LEDs because I thought they might have been causing me the issue. But once I get the temperature gauge working with the new regulator, then I'll have another go at fitting the LEDs. Hopefully it's not them that's causing any issue. LEDs use less current, so I don't think they should cause me any issues. But my mate Fred did say that LED dash lights played havoc with the dash in his Fiesta, which is a much later car, so we'll just have to see how that goes. So if I just turn the ignition on, I'll just show you that most things work now. There's the horn. Obviously the indicator stalk is knackered, as I showed you earlier, but they do come on. Got wipers. Which don't park on their own, but I have sussed out the reason why. Now originally this car would have been fitted with a foot pump to spray the water on the windscreen, and the earth from the motor runs through that foot pump, because obviously when you pump it to squirt water on your windscreen, it's also supposed to do one swipe of the windscreen wipers. Now what I figured out is if I earth this wire, which would have gone to that foot pump, to this terminal here, it does park. So that's sweet. Also the heater fan works. And the fuel pump works, which I don't want to run for too long because there's no fuel in the tank. So apart from the broken indicator stalk, everything on the electric seems to be working. I'll just run through the lights. So as you saw, the only lights that I wasn't able to get working are the tail lights and brake lights, which are obviously all one bulb. I have tested for voltage at these connectors and it's all fine, both sides. And as you can see, the number plate light is on now that the headlight switch is on. So the next stage is obviously to get myself one of those aftermarket voltage regulators and fit that, and hopefully the clocks will all work properly then, and hopefully I'll be able to use these blue LEDs for the backlights on the clocks because they look really good. And as I say, I'm going to need to buy another indicator stalk. I need to do a little bit of a tidying up behind here with all the wiring, just wrap it all up in electrical tape. That's not a massive job, I'll save that for another day. Right now I need to get the battery back off the Mark 1, fit it back to the Mark 2, and then I need to have a little bit of a tidy up in my garage before I go home. I'm going to end this video here, but I hope you're enjoying seeing the Mark 1 come to life. If you thought this video was any good, give it a thumbs up. If you thought it was shit, give it a thumbs down. Click subscribe and activate the notification bell to be kept right up to date with any other videos that I post in the future. Make sure you check out my Facebook and my Instagram, and I'll leave the links you need for that in the description of this video. Until next time, thanks for watching. So you never guess what? My mate George has just found a bit of plastic from my stalk on the floor. Cheers, mate. When it comes to finding shit, you're the man. That's a result. That's saved me a good few quid. See you next time.